Everybody, what's up, man? You know what I mean? No one made a request, so just make a quick video, man. You know, it's the year 2026, and you know, a lot of predictions have come true, you know, and heading towards 2028 to 2030. A lot of content has become content that's focused on how distant men have become. You know what I'm saying? How unreachable men have become. And, there's the whole narrative of the male loneliness epidemic, which is a major scam. You know what I'm saying? What's funny about the whole male loneliness epidemic talking point is that you know, a man can go to work for 14, 15 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, truck drivers hauling whatever, by themselves, all alone. You know what I'm saying? All alone, the man could work all day, then come home. You know, it's funny that you hear there's a male loneliness epidemic, but somehow a man isn't alone when he goes to work, and depending on what he does, whether he works the mines or whatever that man is doing by himself. It's funny how you can go to work for hours, days, truck drivers, whatever, weeks, months, a man could go to work by himself alone, yet somehow you want me to believe a man can't live alone. So you can work alone, but what I'm saying, living alone is a problem. You know, you know me, man. I get a little deeper. I'll break it down to you. I'll break it down. What they're really saying with the whole male loneliness epidemic scam that's going on is that they're basically saying they don't count when a man goes to work all alone by himself. They don't count that. What they count is that a man will come from work and isn't serving anybody. You know what I'm saying? Isn't serving anybody after working all these hours, because they don't count you going to work by yourself as you being alone. You know, funny how that works. You know what I'm saying? We live in a extremely consumer first society. That's why I've been saying for years, you could look up the video Male Limitation Society. The whole system is set up to where you're supposed to just, work to make the money to spend on consumption. And the gateway to consumption is you being in a relationship, you being in a long-term relationship. That's the gateway. You know what I'm saying? That's the gateway to consumerism. That's why all the laws are designed with stripping the man's authority, because the only thing you should be doing as a man is working to make money to consume. You know what I'm saying? And since they know men are simplistic and damn, I forget the word, minimalistic. I made a video on that years ago. You could look it up. Existence over purpose, or minimalist something. Did a video on that years ago. But the system doesn't count when you as a man are not working. You know what I mean? They don't count when you're working. I mean, when you're working, it doesn't matter. It don't matter if you're some scientist that's overseas for 3 years. None of that matters. All that matters is that you cater towards consumerism. You know what I'm saying? That's the only thing that matters. When they're saying male loneliness epidemic, it's really saying that men don't have the right to not spend their money towards consumerism. You know what I'm saying? That's really what's going on. And, you know, for the past over 5 years, I've been talking about full-time ghosting and men basically going on to a zero attachment, zero attachments and zero liabilities. You know what I'm saying? You could look up, YouTube deleted my video Full-Time Ghosting 2.0. It was the greatest, probably greatest video I've ever made in my life. You know what I'm saying? But, full-time, but, Casper Pill, 3.0 is still available. You know what I'm saying? And I'll see if I can re-upload that video or something. I'm still working on something, an alternative. But the thing is this, man, men are really, what's really happening with, like I've said with full-time ghosting, you know, is that men are really protesting consumerism. You know what I'm saying? Men are removing themselves from the role of consumer. Because once you become zero liability, like I told men with the cast when I was with full-time ghosting, it's zero attachments, zero liabilities. You know what I'm saying? When you think about that, zero attachments, zero liability. You know what I'm saying? The only thing you are aware of is yourself. Yourself is all that matters. You know what I'm saying? And once you say zero liabilities, a lot of these lesser men making content online, lesser men. Shout out to the homie Kalala. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the homies on the Discord. You know what I'm saying? I started calling people lesser men. You know what I'm saying? The lesser men online, red pillars and, all that crap. The lesser men online will tell you, oh, you know what? You know, they're gonna give advice and all that. They don't get that they don't get what liability actually means. You know what I'm saying? They put liability on relationships. They don't understand that the true definition of liability is anything that gets in the way of your freedom. You know, your ability to be free is a liability. You know what I'm saying? Your ability to just get up and walk. The they framed that the first what was it, the oldest I forget what they call it, the oldest, was it hobby, the oldest job, I forgot what they say the oldest job is, a chick selling feline, fancy feast, a chick selling a fancy feast, you know what I'm saying, or cat food. A chick selling cat food is the oldest job. That's a lie. The oldest career is nomadicism, and that's man's number one instinct. His most natural instinct is to be nomadic. Think about it. When you gotta go get a job, you might have to leave your town to get a job. You might have to leave your county. You might have to leave your state. And you're like, man, I gotta get this opportunity. Nomadicism is the number one. You know what I'm saying? When they put that narrative that the oldest, and a lot of men don't get that, they're basically discounting the fact that men are the ones that are the originals and the oldest employed, the oldest working ever. So they gotta say the oldest career is a chick selling cat food. You know what I'm saying? A chick selling that cat leg, cat food. You know what I mean? It's to discount men. You got to understand, when you're in a male limitation society, uh, an emasculated society, and I got my book, man. I'm gonna start advertising the book. I thank the brothers that bought it, Man Vantage, and I urge you, buy Man Vantage, man. You want a book? Give me a second. Where the hell's the book? Give me a second. Got some coffee. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You gotta get this book, man. Get you a copy of Man Vantage, man. You know what I'm saying? I wrote this book for everyone. You know what I'm saying? It's less than 90 pages. And it's a book you should carry around with you at all times. This should be in your travel case. This should be something you're reading and traveling with. Man Vantage. You know what I'm saying? You need that. I wrote it to help everyone out, And it would truly mean a lot for me for someone to make a video review on it, share their thoughts, It would truly mean a lot for me, But the thing is this, man. Liabilities. The lesser men online are lying about liabilities. They say a relationship is a liability. No, man. I told guys with full-time ghosting, zero attachments, zero liability, zero birth rates. You know what I'm saying? In a, domestic system where you are basically targeted. You know what I'm saying? You know, and you operate on the law of zero. If it ain't you, it gets zero. And what's happening, all these lesser men are making content telling you, liability is marriage, relationships. No, liability is you investing in a mortgage. You know what I'm saying? Liability is you investing in a mortgage where, they tell you a lie that you could finance it the same way for the next 50 years or whatever. Like the money's gonna mean the same, like inflation doesn't matter, Liability is you not buying the land, Liability is you not having the authority, you know what I'm saying? Why would you want to own the house over the land beneath the house? You know what I'm saying? That's a liability. You want freedom. You know what I'm saying? To reach absolute freedom, you can't have any liabilities. You gotta be able to, even the way you spend, they've trained a lot of men, you know, I'll tell you a great exercise you gotta try. When you get a chance, go to a thrift store. Go to a thrift store, man. A thrift store is the definition of just how destroyed the family culture is in this country. You know what I'm saying? I remember growing up, we used to have hand-me-downs, your brother, your older cousin, your family would save stuff for you, to give to you, you know what I'm saying? Shirts, pants, even a baby stroller would be saved to give away, right? And we were shamed for that. You were shamed, oh, you're wearing your cousin's t-shirt. We were shamed, man. And a lot of men listening to this think, oh, you were shamed as an individual. No, the family structure was shamed. You know what I'm saying? Your family loved you so much, they saved something for you. Your toys, they saved. Just think about that, man. One of your family members is playing a PlayStation 4 and they could have sold it and they said, you know what, man? I might not be playing the PS4 too long, but I'm going to save it for my cousin. I'm going to save it for my younger brother or something. I'm going to save it for somebody in my family. Think about that. And they shamed that out because that was affecting consumerism. You know what I'm saying? We're in a consumer first society. Everything is designed from the standpoint of empowering consumerism. That's why the marriage laws are the way they are. That's why all the laws are the way they are. They have to position authority to the most easily manipulated consumer, and that's the women. You know what I'm saying? You literally have women spending $200 on their hair every month or two. $200. Then fake eyelashes, fake nails. The amount of money that's being spent. Their literal body is a rental. You know what I'm saying? They're paying. It's such a high rental. Their body. You know what I mean? For magnets, their own self magnets is just constant spending. And they know if the men was in authority, that would stop. You know what I'm saying? We got history to prove that. 1940s, 1920s, 30s, early 1950s. We have examples when men are in charge and have authority, they'll save money, they'll restructure budget, they'll lead with logic with the finances, and you won't see I forget spontaneous spending. FOMO won't affect the man. FOMO, fear of missing out won't affect the man. You know what I'm saying? None of that will work. And what's happening now is that, you know, with full-time ghosting and what's happening is they think, you know what, these men are alone. These men are stepping away from society. And what's funny about those narratives you hear from these lesser men, men are abandoning society. Why are men still working? The men are still doing their jobs. They're basically implying that if men do not participate in consumerism, they're abandoning society. Forget that the men are the plumbers, they're fixing the roads, and they're doing these jobs and stuff, maintaining society and the nation and all that. No, the men are abandoning society because they're not consuming, they're not drinking alcohol. Look up, the alcohol industry has lost over, I heard, $4 billion or $8 billion. They lost billions of dollars because, the men aren't spending anymore. It's funny how, they spend all this time advertising anti-male narratives, and then they get shocked when the men aren't spending money. A funny one is the colleges. Colleges have targeted and demonized men. And now, remember, the men went to college, then went to the bars, spent money. It correlated. And, they raised the price too much on colleges, which the prices were raised by basically stripping the resources that the men brought, the scholarships, and giving it to the female and all that stuff. I don't want this video to end up being, 12 hours long, 2 hours, me. But they're basically saying if you don't participate in consumerism, you're abandoning society. You know what I'm saying? That's what's going on. And what is the gateway to consumerism? It's the relationship with the woman in this system. You know what I'm saying? That's the gateway to absolute consumerism. You hear all these narratives online. Oh, men don't want to go to dinner. Men don't want to spend money. And I did a video on dating a long time ago, dating simulation. You know what I'm saying? If it's not deleted, I explained years ago that dating is nothing more than an unpaid trying to volunteer to pay for your internship, as in you're an unpaid intern where you're paying for your internship. That's what dating is. It's just a constant interview to keep paying money. You keep hearing these narratives with how consumeristic the women have become. They don't take her out because she don't want to cook for you, man. She don't want to spend time with you. It's all about consumption now. And what's happened is they've positioned the women to strictly worship and speak up. Like a lot of these lesser men making videos, oh my God, they only want a rich guy, they only want a rich man. These lesser men, they can't break it down and make sense of it, that with what's going on, the women can basically only support and worship the wealth of a man. When women are asking for money and all that, it's really them worshiping the wealth. What's happened now, you could take this word cashnetics. You know what I'm saying? What's happened is we're in a society where praise, it's not about praising the man, it's praising the money that the man has obtained to where he can justify more participation in consumerism. That's what a lot of these guys don't understand. When these women are saying six figures, 666, whatever, it's all about worshiping the 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 ability to participate in consumerism. Now, picture this, right? Picture that consumerism is like an amusement park, right? An amusement park, and you pay money to entry. Think about an amusement park. It ain't free. Every time you go to this amusement park, you got to pay, right? That's what consumerism is. Now, imagine your life where you got to wake up every day to go to an amusement park. You know what I'm saying? Every day you got to go to an amusement park. You got amusement maxing. You know what I'm saying? Oh, ooh. Well, that's a good word. Amusement maxing. Oh, that's hard. That's hard right there. That's what you got to do. So when the women are saying six figures, this and that, they're basically looking for the men that will have more access to consumerism. You know what I'm saying? That's all it is. And then the worship of those men don't even mean stability anyway. You know what I'm saying? With the spending, it's to spend those men dry. You could look up how many rich men and wealthy men, their retirements, they've blown it, trips, vacations, to constantly participate in consumerism. You know what I mean? So, that's one of the narratives. You know what I'm saying? So you look at that, and what's happening right now, for me to wrap up this video, is that they don't get it with full-time ghosting. Is that a lot of men are they're not avoiding people. They're not avoiding their lives. Men have not abandoned society. Don't buy into that bullshit. They say, oh, men have left society, while there are still men working the sewers, still men working the roads, maintaining the buildings. That's these lesser men are all about selling to you. You know what I'm saying? Misery. You know what I'm saying? Misery. I remember when a guy said this when we were on good talking terms. He said they're merchants of misery. Man, it was such a great quote. Merchants of misery. It's what a lot of these lesser pillars are selling. Lesser men, they can't accept that you have arrived at the point of stability. The majority of men are returning to their natural state. A man's natural state is, man, what matters is, of course, priority is, protection, provisions, of course, resources and shelter. Men are returning. You know what I'm saying? Men are returning to the bare bones, and that's terrifying, because what's happening is you can't shame the men anymore. And I told guys this years ago, they're going to try to challenge you. They're going to say a real man would do this and that. You would pursue this and that. No, man, that challenge crap is a scam. Because the honest truth, and these lesser men, all these content creators won't tell you this, men did not chase or pursue nothing. You know what I'm saying? The men were working, and a lot of times the fathers, why do you think, why do you think you had to get the father? And notice this is one thing they remove. They say you got to get the father's approval. No, the father didn't just tell the daughter she got to get a man with his approval. No, he would also be in communication with other men to set up and arrange his daughter with a man he respected. And another thing, I gotta make a video on, maybe I gotta make a video on why there is a destined singlehood, why it's destined, whatever, is that another thing that's happening is by removing a father from authority. You know what I'm saying? Men used to set up and arrange marriages for their daughters, And here's the thing about that. You could look it up. Men would, of course, talk to other men in the town, to figure out their sons, what their sons are doing. and they would set up their daughter with you know, the neighbor's son. You know what I'm saying? They approve of the neighbor's son. Or another thing that would happen is, let's say the man's daughter was of age, you know what I'm saying? Let's say 18 years old. His daughter's 18, you know what I'm saying? 18 to 21, let's say that. The man would also, if one of his friends was single, you know what I'm saying, a man he respected, he would also arrange a situation where he would basically arrange a relationship between his daughter, who's of age, with a man he respected. You know what I'm saying? You know, that would also happen as well, because the man would ideally think that the biggest danger he could have, the biggest threat would be to allow his daughter to be alone and devoured by the world. You know what I'm saying? Because this is a man's world, and nobody plays mind games, you know, like us men. You know what I'm saying? As much as you watch all this internet crap where they're telling you, oh, the women play the best mind games. Right. Julius Caesar, man. I wonder who killed who. I wonder who unalived Julius Caesar. I wonder who, you know, I wonder how my fellow Haitians, you know, ancestors beat Napoleon. It must have not been the men. I wonder how Nat Turner led all that major revolts. You know, I wonder if it was just the women. You know what I'm saying? This is a man's world, and the biggest danger and threat to women is facing this world without the county counter to it is male leadership. You know, that's why you see all these BBLs, all this self-destruction, because they have no male authority. You know what I'm saying? A woman without male authority is basically being served. You know what I'm saying? Being served to the system, like at a deli. You know what I'm saying? I used to tell guys years ago, man, that's what you got out there, deli meat. You know what I'm saying? When you go to the deli, you see the meat through the see-through glass, you know? See-through glass, and that's what you have out there. The women are just being served like deli meat. You know what I'm saying? That's what's going on, like deli meat. Because the society has done what it's done. It's stripped the men as a position of leadership. And what's happened, and this is over 4 or 5 decades, some communities more than that, you know. And what's happening is, you know, I'll go into more detail on another video, but what's happening is, like I said, with full-time ghosting, once men say zero liabilities, zero attachments, as in men are not attached to the past, the ideals, nothing, zero attachments. Men are strictly focused on themselves, their prosperity, and of course, what's happening, you know, they're trying to say men have lost passion, men are not emotional, pursuing anything, because that's the normal state of a man. What is a man gonna pursue, you know, and you could look up history, what is he pursuing a bill for? You know what I'm saying? Men pursue careers, hobbies, competition, you know, things that truly have a meaning by default. You know what I'm saying? Of course, we're in a society where they've positioned that, you know, the catfish, you know what I'm saying? They've positioned that, you know, the tuna, you know what I mean? The peaches and cream, you know, have such high value. You know what I'm saying? You know, the peaches and cream between the feet. You know what I'm saying? The peaches between her feet. You know what I'm saying? Has the highest value when she can't go to the store and buy anything with that. You know what I mean? I've been saying this for years. You know what I'm saying? Well, what chick have you seen just swiped her thing to buy something at the supermarket if it has such high value? But, you know, it's the scam. It's the setup of this consumer society, and every aspect is involved, from faith, corporate, the industry field, or it's gotten better, the industry. You know what I'm saying? The industry. You know what I mean? It's an entire industry, man. You know what I mean? And what's going on. But what's happening is, with men embracing this full-time ghosting, consciously, subconsciously, it's, men are becoming, I forget the word. A ghost is, you can't touch a ghost. Damn, I forgot the word, man. Intangible? Is it intangible? Men are becoming intangible, and men are becoming, by default, the natural state of a man, indifferent. You know what I'm saying? Men just, because the honest truth is, all this relationship stuff, emotional stuff, you know what I'm saying? That was never the majority of men. That was some Hollywood consumer depicted version of a man. You know what I'm saying? What man wakes up and says, "Oh my God, I can't wait to find a woman to write a poem for"? You know what I'm saying? That ain't the normal man. Normal men wake up, "Yo, man, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna eat? What am I planning for the future? Whatever, whatever." You know what I'm saying? But, we know the majority of what's running the media is all about, selling to the women what the men must be, which is nothing more than tools of consumption, which would mean the men are over emotional. Why do you think the women keep saying, "I feel what I lead," keep leading with their feelings? Because that's what has been subjected to them by the field. You know what I mean? The system. The system is set it up to where that's all the women can lean on is their emotion, because male authority doesn't exist. Fathers don't have authority anymore. You could look up videos of daughters disrespecting their fathers. You know what I'm saying? There is no more male authority. You know? Male authority is like Bigfoot, man. Like you being able to say you can call Bigfoot. You know what I'm saying? Anybody could call Bigfoot right now and be like, yo, Bigfoot, what's good, bro? You know what I mean? So, pull up, man. Pull up, and I want to chop it up with you. Anybody got Bigfoot's number? I don't think so. You know what I mean? So the narrative that, you know what I mean, male authority and respect exists, it's a scam. It's a scam, bro. Male authority. Only male authority exists is at the job and careers, and even that is a joke. We've all seen that in person, how humorous and comedic that is, where you got bosses now that are scared to be in an office alone with a woman to talk to her and tell her how to do her job or what she's doing. You know what I'm saying? That's how powerful the men are, that they can't even be a boss to a woman at the career level. But like I said, man, the men are they're returning to their natural form, and men are naturally indifferent, man, and what's happening is all this male loneliness narrative, all this talk, it doesn't mean anything, because the truth is the men can't even care. It can't matter. They can't process fiction as a reality. You hear all this relationships, dating, and all that. And the thing is, I've been saying this for years, the men know that it's limited in its allowance. The men know that, let's say you find a woman caring, loving, all that, supportive, will cook and whatever, clean. The men know that's on a limited time basis. The men know that that's on a limited time basis, and something will trigger the end of that. You know what I'm saying? The end of that, because you have no authority. And at some point, her emotions will absorb. You know what I'm saying? You got to look at, the men were the tools to maintain and regulate female emotion. The men were the only way to stop a woman's emotion from absolutely consuming her. And now you're in a society where, man, that emotion is her authority. You know what I'm saying? And you as a man have no authority. And the system you live in has basically set you up to volunteer, you know what I'm saying, and be a sacrificial lamb, you know. And volunteers, I've been saying is volunteers can't be victims, you know. That's why you hear all these videos where, why doesn't anyone care about the men and feel sad for them? What is there to feel sad about? You volunteered. You know what I'm saying? You're the one who got on one knee, proposed, and did all that BS. You know what I'm saying? You're the one who proposed with a legal binding contract for a situation where there is no protection for it. And you don't even need that. You know, it's funny, you watch all these videos where these men will say, you know, these lesser men will say, oh man, you know, I lost everything in divorce, this and that. But dude, you know, when you were dating her, what changed? You're dating her. Y'all still were together. Y'all lived together. Y'all did everything together. You know what I'm saying? Before you strapped on the government's marriage license. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like this, man. It's kind of like you buy a car. It's kind of like you bought a car, you know what I'm saying? Or you're renting a car, whatever. You're driving it around, renting it, whatever. And, you know, that's all you want to do with the car. And at some point, you make a major investment in the car where you never needed to. You know what I'm saying? But I might be warping what I'm saying. But basically, so you slept with her, y'all shared a house together, y'all lived together, y'all did everything except having a piece of paperwork that says the government acknowledges and validates your relationship. That's all marriage is at this point. You know, all marriage is government validation. That's all it is. You know, the government validated our relationship. That's all it is. You know what I'm saying? So what's happened right now is as the men evolve, you know, the men are evolving. And I'm going to say something before I forget is that the younger generation of men, Gen Z and Gen Alpha that are growing up is that, dude, this 1940s and 50s crap, it don't exist for them. For the younger men, Gen Z, you hear all these you know, lesser men, you know, these lesser men telling men want it like the 1950s, you see? The 1950s. Dude, what is a guy who's 21 right now? You know what I'm saying? Who doesn't even remember ever seeing Michael Jordan play? You know what I'm saying? Well, how could he remember how Wilt Chamberlain lived? You know what I'm saying? The younger generation, your Gen Zs to Gen Alpha coming up, they don't remember. For them, the 1940s and 50s is like some type of, you know what I'm saying, a myth. You know, it's like a myth. For them, it's like, whoa, that really existed? Oh my God. The 1940s is real? The 1930s is real? Oh my God, I didn't even know, bro. Tell me, what? That's real? The 1940s is, look, we're in the year 2020. Think about this. We're in the year 2020. We're in the year 2020s, and men are talking about idealizing the 1940s and 50s. What is that like? Damn, my math might be off. What is that? Isn't that 60 or 70 years ago? My math is off. You know what I'm saying? My math is off. I don't remember it completely. But isn't that like over 80 years ago? You know what I'm saying? It's over 80 years ago. And, you know, us millennials, such as myself, Gen Xers, we grew up on shows such as The Honeymooners, you know what I'm saying, the show with the Fonz. You know, we saw it. We grew up at a time where There was a lot of shows based on those times, but your Gen Zs, you know what I'm saying? Even the older Gen Z guys will be like, I don't fully remember that. For Gen Z, what's old is what, that 70s show? You know what I'm saying? That 70s show, the 70s for a Zoomer is like, man, that was 1,000 years ago, right? You know what I'm saying? And you want them to worship the 1940s? Come on, man. But to get back to the point is that the men are evolving. The men are returning to the point. That's why you see alcohol prices are dropping. You know, a lot of things are dropping because men are returning to where nothing dictates what they do except themselves. You know what I'm saying? Men aren't even watching sports anymore. You know, we know how corrupt that is. You know, I could talk about that all day, but you know that's something else. But you know what's happened to the sports industry and all that. But the men are basically stepping. The men are no longer stepping out of themselves. You know what I'm saying? They're only stepping towards their ideals and what they want to do. And what's happening as we head towards 2030. You know what I'm saying? Morgan Stanley, they brought up 45% of women will be single. That's a lie. You know what I'm saying? That's really a number that the media will start selling. It's only 45%. It's only 45%. That's what they're marketing. The honest truth is it's gonna be over 50%. You know what I'm saying? Damn near over 60%. You know, because as the men have realized, dude, make your money. And the ultimate thing, I'm the only guy who's been saying this. I'm the only guy who's been saying this. A lot of men are evolving with with full-time ghosting. A lot of men are accepting that, yo, if I'm never getting married, if I'm never gonna have children here, why am I living a life where I'm in pursuit of that? You know, a lot of men, you're gonna see the stats pop up where a lot of men are just living in dormitory setups. Men will completely go to their natural state, which is absolute minimalism. You know, minimalism is a way to protect yourself from, inevitable threats, inflation, other men, or job loss, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Things just randomly happening. So a lot of men are returning to absolute minimalism. And the men know that them having authority is a movie, it's fictional. There's no such thing as male authority. When bosses are telling you, well, yeah, yeah, I had to keep the door open because, Janice wanted to have a private interview, private moment with me. And I said, you know what, I can't do that. I got to keep the door open and got to make sure some other people are there. You know, I don't want any, Me Too's. I don't want any Me Too, I want us, I want a we moment. I don't want a Me Too moment. You know what I'm saying? So I told Janice, keep the door open and we don't do private meetings anymore. That would be disrespectful of your safety. Think about that. You got CEOs and bosses, men, terrified of being in a room alone with a woman. You know, once the men see that at the top, the very top, the very peak, you have no authority. You know what I'm saying? Male CEOs, male managers, I've seen it with my own eyes. You know what I'm saying? So the men are returning and accepting zero attachments. You know what I'm saying? Zero liabilities. People don't understand what zero liabilities means. There are no liabilities. The only liability, you know what I'm saying, and it ain't really a liability, the only issue a man has is himself. You know what I'm saying? There's a chance there it is. It ain't liability, it's discipline. What's happening is men are returning to the point where When you have zero liabilities, it's now all about your discipline. You know what I'm saying? How disciplined are you? You know, and that's the only threat to men now is how disciplined am I? So a lot of men are in the zero liabilities. I've been saying this for years. Anything that can prevent you from moving forward. And with men operating on zero liabilities, it means men will never move in with a woman. It also means men can never claim a woman in a relationship because the men are looking at the liability aspect. That if they're together, I'll give you an example. Most men, these lesser men making content, don't think about. And a lot of men are simulating. A man's mind, when your main focus now is zero liabilities, zero attachments, your mind is just constantly simulating, simulating to stay that way and avoid the liabilities. And when you look outside the world, all that's advertised, it's liabilities in the system guidance, and the system keep wanting you to head towards these liabilities. So a lot of men are in a position where, man, they're constantly simulating. And what men are realizing, and lesser men aren't going to tell you this, but men are realizing, okay, a lot of women have rosters, right? A lot of the women have rosters, right? So let's say you're with a woman, she's with another man, that man beats her, then she comes to you. You know what I'm saying? She comes to you, then puts the charges on you to show the man that beat her that she's so loyal to him that she will press charges on another man for the assault that he did. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people kept thinking I was the one who's out of place, but a lot of men are running these type of narratives in their minds, these type of sequences and scenarios. And the men are realizing nothing, man. There's nothing out there. If I have no authority, I can't say anything. I can't do anything. And the other thing that's nasty is that, man, shout out to the homie D, man. Shout out to Nezzy Nez. Shout out to Gold Pillar. Shout out to Kalala, man. That unknown ranch, that unknown ranch dressing. Think about it. You can't tell the women nothing. And they have rosters. So what's stopping her from coming to see you right after she got some unknown ranch? Ranch dressing. She just gargled some ranch. You know what I'm saying? Gargled some ranch dressing. You know what I'm saying? Swam, got ranch dressing splashed all over. You know what I'm saying? There was some chicks bragging about bragging about night times with many men. You know what I'm saying? Night times with many men and getting those numbers up. What is it? There's a chick, you could look it up, Australian, 500 bodies in one night. 500 bodies in one night. You know what I mean? So a lot of men are realizing, man, how clean, bro. You know what I mean? How clean. I would say this, bro, and I don't think you could really, I wouldn't do it. It'd be too risky. It ain't worth your time. But I guarantee, man, if men were to carry some blue lights with them, like a small blue light, you know what I'm saying? The stuff you would see, the ranch, the unknown ranch you would see with a blue light would terrify you. You know what I'm saying? You kiss her cheek and, the ranch, dried ranch, you know what I'm saying? Dried unknown ranch from another man, on her cheek. You know what I mean? The men have realized there are no morals. Morality is deemed, a man's abusive, The word abuse now is basically if a man tries to have any authority, any rules, standards, you know what I'm saying? Look up John Cena. Look up even though John Cena's he's a closet field, he's a weirdo, but look up how his relationship ended. And she, in all honesty, you know, allegedly, or what I'm thinking is she just went around the news, spoke about him like he was a demon, for setting standards, saying, when you live in my house, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. Here's my standards. And they demonized him. She went around, she toured all these interviews as though, I think it's one of the Bella twins. She went on a tour just saying how disgusting and misogynist or toxic masculinity that John Cena had for having rules and regulations in his household, in his relationship, that she had to follow anything that a man told her. Not authority, not the police, not the government. You know what I'm saying? He would have the gall to tell her something. So what's happened is, man, men are running these. I told guys, man, I've been ahead of my time, man. I'm over 10, 25, 50 years ahead. You know what I'm saying? Over 50 years ahead of my time, bro. You know what I'm saying? And with what's happening, you know, everything that's happening now for me, it's not even in slow motion. It's old news, man. It's old. You know what I'm saying? Nothing now is new for me. Shout out to the homie Kalala. I was chopping it up with him, and it's starting to happen to him. You know what I'm saying? We talking so much in the future tense that, and I realize that word is future tense. I speak in the future. You know what I'm saying? So when I speak, I'm talking about what's happening. I'm in the pursuit of knowing what's going to come 5, 10, 15, 25, 30 years from now. You know what I'm saying? And what happened to the homie Kalala was we on the Discord chopping it up, talking, and shout out we Gold Pillar, other people we talking, and a lot of the homies is like, yo, hold the truth hostage, man. I see what you mean. I heard about this news. I heard about the birth rate decline, and you were talking about that over 5 years ago. I heard about the men not showing up to any dating events. You were talking about that 5 years ago. This is all old. You hold the truth hostage, man. All this stuff is old news, bro. And the new theme, the new question I'd be asking is, tell me something new. That's why I be telling guys, and it's happening to them. They're starting to get deja vu. You know what I'm saying? Because talking to a guy like me, I'm spoiling your life. I'm spoiling the future. You know what I'm saying? I'm future spoiler, with the prophecies. I've been, utilizing math to predict what the hell's coming. You know what I mean? And I'm spoiling the future for guys on the Discord. We're talking, and some of the guys have learned to apply the way I'm talking for their own lives, and they come to me and they're like, yo, man, they're telling me what's coming up. And I'm like, we're talking in future tense. We become a bunch of guys where we're talking about what's coming, what's gonna happen. We're not even talking about the current or moment right now. We're talking about the future and what's happening. Future tense. We don't speak in the past tense. We reference the past tense. We don't speak in the current tense, what's currently happening. We don't speak in the now. We don't, you know what I mean? We're speaking towards the future. And what's happened to a lot of guys is, man, deja vu. Deja vu is happening, where we've spoken about so many things. I mean, YouTube's deleted over 100 of my live streams. Over 200 videos of mine have been deleted. Just imagine how many things I've spoken about. So a lot of guys I talk to are talking to me and they're like, yo, hold the truth hostage, man. Bro, my man, my boy. Man, this is feeling deja vu. It's like I've already lived that or known about it. It's nothing new, man. And it's happening to a lot of guys, and sometimes the homies got to take a break. Sometimes people disappear from the Discord for like, weeks on end because they're like, man, I want to. I want to be able to live my life, bro. I want to be able to be surprised because the longer I'm talking to people, talking to this Hold the Truth hostage guy, bro, we're talking we're talking like we're trying to spoil the future. You know what I'm saying? Like the future is a movie. You know what I'm saying? We're talking like that, and a lot of guys will leave the Discord, take a break because they want to be able to be surprised by life. Versus, yo, Hold the Truth hostage, man. You were right. That did happen. And then or I'm talking to them and I'm like, yeah, you were right. That did happen. You know what I'm saying? Or I'm talking to some guys, some of the homies came up with some new lingo and finished it up, you know what I'm saying? So, I created the word we know about industry plant. You know what I'm saying? I'm the one who finished it. I created the definition, the full spiral definition of it, and I'll go into detail, but there's the industry seed. You know what I'm saying? The industry seed is when they create a person that's so-called struggling, up and coming. You know what I'm saying? Look up IShowSpeed, how he said, I was poor and I was just live streaming for over 2 years. I think he said without a job or something. Right, yeah. Industry seed. Then you got somebody like, Mr. Beast or whatever, an industry plant. You could look it up, man. You know what I'm saying? Then I said, I created, the industry garden is when you get multiple industry plants together. You see all the collaborations. IShowSpeed is collaborating with Mr. Beast. You know what I'm saying? How would IShowSpeed, who's living a completely different life, a different environment, he'd be reaching out to Mr. Beast to do collaborations instead of multiple other people? Why are they even collaborating? But that's plant to plant. That's the industry garden. Then the homie Kalala made the industry field, where, they get all these awards, all these events and award shows, and, where they're displayed in, the industry field, Then beyond the industry field, you have, what I'm saying, the industry, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Well, it goes a little further, whatever. But the industry field is basically, everything that's happening and all that. But to finish it up is simple, man. Men are, as full-time ghosting happens, as men realize the only authority they have is themselves. The only thing they can trust is themselves. You know what I'm saying? Because legally, it's literally in the law now that's how it is. You can't trust anyone but yourself now. I would have to do another video to go deeper into why a lot more men are, not having communities outside or what's going on. Why things as a man feel, you got to ask yourself, how come it feels like you have less attachments to others? Ooh, zero attachments. Oh, damn. Come on, man. You got to give me that. That was a nice setup. Why you feel so out of touch? Why you feel like, what I'm saying? I forget the word. They said there was a monoculture. Why are you not a part of the culture and everything going on, man? Because there's zero attachments. Men are completely disattached. Zero attachments to the system and everything. And the men are just working and doing what they do. And the thing is this, I would have to talk about this in another video, the Passport Bro situation, men flying, but a lot of the women don't understand and the society doesn't understand. Many men won't be able to ever fly out of here, or they never will. You know what I'm saying? But men are more than capable of just living their lives where they are. You know what I'm saying? Never flying outside and all this and that. Men are more than capable of just existing. You know what I'm saying? That's what they never counted on. This, you know, they set it up to where men will always get married. They'll always volunteer. They'll always volunteer, but they don't get that. A man's default state. You put a man in a corner where you basically tell him, you know what I'm saying, you can't follow your natural instincts of wanting to start a family and have a family. You basically tell that man the only thing you can do is be in your default state, which is a loner or a part of a bachelor group of men. You know what I'm saying? A bachelor group or whatever. You know what I'm saying? They've put the men in that state, and the men are like, okay, whatever. I'll just be a bachelor, or I'll be a loner and just, you know, wander around, whatever. You know what I'm saying? They don't get that. A man could just wander around doing nothing, just living. You know what I'm saying? Just living, bro. And, you know, there's another video I got to make about that, you know what I'm saying? But the men could just by default just live, you know what I'm saying? And they won't lose nothing, you know? A man could end up living over 40 years alone, you know? No family, nothing. You know what I mean? And that man's gonna be perfectly fine. You gotta remember, men will naturally, you know, they've put the image of men, they've demonized men, but men will naturally invest in other men, you know, mentorship, you know. Men will naturally mentor other men, which could substitute their wanting of having children or a son. A man will mentor. We have thousands of stories. I mean, look up Bloodsport. If you look up Bloodsport, it's all about a man. If you watch the movie Bloodsport and his master Tanaka, you know, how he lost his son and he invests all his father figure, fatherly, you know, need to be a father into Jean-Claude Van Damme as a mentor. We men can naturally mentor. You know what I'm saying? I mentored some men. You know what I mean? Some men have reached out to me online, email. We've chopped it up, and I've mentored some guys overseas. Some guys have hit me up from a whole other country, you know. Some have hit me up from a whole other state, and we chopped it up. I mentored. You know, they asked me for my advice, and we spoke. And they're doing a lot better. They're doing their lives. They're doing their thing. We men will naturally mentor other men, or will substitute. You know what I'm saying? We will substitute our need, because we're men. We naturally, you know, they've positioned that, oh, you gotta be a stepfather. You know what I mean? Like, the only way a man can be in the life of you know, a child without having one is to be a stepfather. You know, when men, we naturally will mentor others. You know what I'm saying? It's a natural state to be a mentor. You know what I'm saying? We're not doing it as much. It's a lot more online because of the nature of things right now in the physical world. And, you know, how you really, what's happened is a lot of men, man, oh, this video could go on forever if I keep going. But, you know, I'll have to do something on mentoring. But a lot of men, to end it quick, is men are mentoring out in the real world because they know if you mentor a child, what's stopping the mother from falsely accusing you of something? Then, if you're mentoring a child, what's stopping that child from falsely accusing you? Because your standards don't go with what's going on with them at home. You know what I'm saying? What's going on with, you know, society that's raising them. So a lot of men now that used to mentor, because I remember chopping it up with some of the homies on what was it? On TikTok. I was chopping it up with some other guys, and how they're not gonna mentor the youth, You know what I mean? There's high risk in that, mentoring the youth. And men have, like I've been saying since Kevin Samuels was alive, there's no such thing as a high value man. You know, there's only high value target. You're a target as a man. And with society telling you you're a target 24/7, men have adapted. And the way men have adapted is to say, well, I'm a target. I ain't gonna put myself in a position where you get a easy aim at me. You get an easy target. I'm not doing that. So men are stepping away. So a lot of male mentorship, I've talked to some guys that are Zoomers, you know what I'm saying? And some guys have reached out to me that are Zoomers, whatever, we chopped it up, you know. And some guys I told them, you can reach out to me, when I'm free, we could talk, whatever, try to help you out, see what I could do. You know what I'm saying? But now it's become men will reach out to, well, not reach out, but men will have to find each other from a standpoint of we align and we could talk. You know what I'm saying? You're a man, I'm a man, 18 and up, we'll talk. You know what I'm saying? We'll talk man to man, And then the other thing, like I said, there's zero attachments, zero liabilities, It applies to other men as well. With zero attachments, zero liability, you know what I'm saying? Men are avoiding each other as well. You show any signs that your thinking pattern is aligning to this system and this society, other men will avoid you. You know what I'm saying? There's some guys that were cool I was chopping it up with, whether it was online or in real life, and as soon as they gave me the trigger warning, the spider senses went out that, oh man, yeah, they're too embedded in this system, man. They're pink pilled out. You know what I'm saying? Pink pilled out, or, they're a dog pillar. You know what I mean? Shout out to the homie Kalala. I'm going to make a video on that. The workhorse, You know what I mean? They're effeminized, Well, you stay away from them, man. So there's a lot of men that don't understand. There's a lot of men that are like, man, why can't I get any friends, man? I reach out to other guys on a Discord. What is that crap now? Substack, Patreon or Facebook. Why can't I make any male friends? Well, you're too much like the system. There's a lot of guys that don't even understand. You send that signal that you're like the system, man. Guys, like I said, zero attachments. You know what I'm saying? Once you operate on a zero attachments perspective, where you have zero attachments and zero, another one I forgot to bring up, zero idealism. You do not place anything above the law. Once you don't place anything above the law, you will find yourself with zero attachments, zero idealism, and zero liabilities, because you're operating strictly off the law. You know what I'm saying? The law and your freedom. That's all that matters. So when that happens, you know what I'm saying? Even if another man tries to talk to you, be your friend and all that, you're going to be looking at him and be like, too much like the system, man. I can't be attached to anybody or talk to anybody that's too close to reflecting this system. So, you do you, I'll do me, or keep you within a distance. We don't gotta talk like that, So it's happening, man. And, I'll have to do another video, but as men full-time ghost, where men have zero attachments, zero idealism. So I'm trying to have an ideal relationship. Think about that. Remove the word ideal. Ideal relationships, ideal traditional family and all that. Once men remove zero idealism, zero attachments, zero liability, you know what I'm saying? Zero birth rates. The laws are zero. You know what I mean? Because that man has to be free. you know, and the man knows the system is willing to sacrifice him at any time, you know, and they're just trying to get him to volunteer. How will the system get you to system guidance? Will it be beauty of a woman? You know what I'm saying? You know, brotherly attachments, you know what I'm saying? You know, you meet a couple guys from work that want, you know, play sports and bond, some brotherly, what they call that, some brotherly unity. You know what I'm saying? The system is always throwing stuff at you. And once men operate on the law of zero, the law ends, you know, in zero. Once men say the only safe thing for me is zero, the only number that represents freedom and safety for me is zero. You know what I'm saying? Zero. Like I used to tell guys, you know, this is all mathematical. Once men approach that, yeah, zero. You know, the only number I can trust, the only number that can add to my life is zero. You know what I'm saying? Zero liabilities, zero idealism. You know what I'm saying? Zero, you know, so zero liabilities, zero attachments, zero idealism, you know what I'm saying? Zero birth rates, you know what I'm saying? Zero, you know what I mean? It just attachments, relationships, you know, zero. Zero risk. That's another one. That's a big one. Zero liabilities, zero risk. Have you noticed there's only one number you can trust that adds to your life in this system is zero. Once men operate on that level, that the only thing that counts is the number, is equaling the number zero. You know what I'm saying? That's what you're chasing in your life. Zero. Because the only number that's free is zero. You know what I'm saying? If you think about it, you can't take away from zero. You know, think about how deep that is, man. You can't subtract from zero. Think about that. Of course, people will try to bring up minus, whatever. You know what I mean? But the truth is, men will look at it and say, yeah, man, the only way I can be safe is to be zero. They can't take nothing away from me if there is zero opportunities for them to ever take anything from me. And all I got to operate my whole life has to be on the number zero. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, this has been Hold the Truth Hostage, where if the truth was so important, we wouldn't negotiate with lies. We would hold the truth hostage. Full-time ghosting isn't an option. It's the only choice, full-time ghost. And zero is the only way for you to lose nothing. You know, the only way to not lose anything is to have zero opportunities. You know, so long as you have zero opportunities to lose anything, you will have everything. Ooh, oh, that's hard. That's hard right there. So long as you have, you know, you provide zero opportunities to lose anything, you will have everything. You gotta say that out loud. And again, my book is available, Man Vantage. I'm telling you, get you a copy of Man Vantage. You can walk around with it, keep it in your book bag. Whenever you feel down, pull out this book and read it. You know what I'm saying? But peace.